How does it feel to be a prince?
It's not really something I sort of think about it. Until his dying day, incredibly loved by the people of Hyderabad.
Time
Correct.
magazine awarded him as the wealthiest man in 1937, right?
Everybody has this thing with him about being a miser, and that is just so far from the truth.
Why could they not become the businessman of India?
You know, they came out of generations.
What are you fighting for? Are you trying to be relevant?
Life for my father here in India was very difficult for him.
If he was happy in Australia, then why did he leave Australia? Was he living in a two-room apartment?
He was not living very well at all.
You have challenged your half-brother Azmat Shah's coronation as ninth Nizam.
Prime Minister Indira Gandhi unequivocally brought it in and said, we do not recognize royal families in India. I think the problem is very complex, and I think it's compounded by a legal system in India that is very, very, very understrained.
हेलो एंड वेलकम, स्वागत है आपका एक्सप्रेस कैफ़े पॉडकास्ट के इस बेहद खास एपिसोड में। कहा जाता है कि हिंदुस्तान इंडिया आज़ादी से पहले प्रिंसली स्टेट्स से भरा हुआ था। 500 से ज़्यादा प्रिंसली स्टेट्स थी जो कि आज़ादी के बाद धीरे धीरे इंडिया में यानी एक डेमोक्रेटिक सेटअप में चली गई। मगर आपको पता है कि आज भी हज़ारों फैमिलीज़, रॉयल फैमिलीज़ इंडिया में रहती हैं, उस हेरिटेज को एंजॉय करती हैं, प्राउड फील करती हैं अपने हेरिटेज पर, मगर साथ ही साथ एक नए तरह के स्ट्रगल से भी गुजर रही हैं। इस पॉडकास्ट में हम लोग एक ऐसी ही रियासत के बारे में बात करेंगे, एक ऐसे प्रिंस के बारे में बात करेंगे, एक ऐसे उत्तराधिकारी के बारे में बात करेंगे जिसके बारे में इंडिया ने सबसे ज़्यादा प्राउड फील किया है। उस रियासत का, उस प्रिंसली स्टेट का नाम है हैदराबाद। ये भी कहा जाता है कि एक टाइम ऐसा था कि स्कॉटलैंड और इंग्लैंड के बराबर की ज़मीन उस रियासत के पास थी। ऐसा भी कहा जाता है कि इटली जितना देश हैदराबाद में था। और बहुत सारी किस्से हैं, बहुत सारी कहानियां हैं और बहुत सारे स्ट्रगल्स भी हैं। और इस पॉडकास्ट में मेरे मेहमान जो हैं वो हैदराबाद रियासत के जो 8th निज़ाम थे, उनके बेटे हैं। आजम शाह इनका नाम है। एंड थैंक यू सर फॉर बीइंग ऑन द शो।
Thank you for having me on.
ये पॉडकास्ट इंग्लिश में होने वाला है क्योंकि आजम शाह को हिंदी नहीं आती है, तो आप अपने यूट्यूब में जाकर ऑटो डबिंग हिंदी में ऑन कर लें ताकि आपको ये बातचीत पूरी समझ आए। और इस पॉडकास्ट को पूरा सुने, आखिर में कमेंट ज़रूर करें। सो थैंक यू फॉर बीइंग ऑन द शो। फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज, हाउ डज इट फील टू बी अ प्रिंस, दैट टू ऑफ अ वेरी वन ऑफ द लार्जेस्ट डायनेस्टीज इन इंडिया?
I don't really, it's not really something I sort of think about a lot. I'm very proud of my heritage down there. I'm very proud of my family name and things of that nature. But I don't really, it's not, when I look in the mirror, I don't think, oh, there's Prince Azam Shah. It's not really something I give that much stock into. Everybody would always say to me, what does it feel like to have, the Nizam being your father? I never really thought of him as the Nizam. To me, he was just dad. It's a wonderful privilege and a wonderful honor to be able to be from a royal family, but it's not something I think about on a daily basis, to be honest.
When did you first realize that the story of your family is different than the most of the stories like ours?
I guess probably in my early teens. You see, we grew up and we spent a vast portion of my very younger years over here in Hyderabad. My father loved it. We'd spend a great amount of time. I would live in Chiran Palace. I had my room upstairs, all the staff, all of this kind of thing. I would go out and play in Purani Haveli. I would go out and play a lot. But my father loved Chalmela. We'd be out there all the time when we were young. it wasn't until I sort of got into my teens that I realized that wasn't a normal existence. That was very separate from what is the norm.
Okay.
No.
And what was your father, Mukram Shah, like away from the public image?
Ah, my father and I had a very, very, very good relationship. We were very, very similar as people. We had very similar mannerisms, very similar sense of humor. One thing not many people know about him is he had a very dry and a very cheeky side to him as well. So he was quite fond of playing little jokes on me and, you know, all of this kind of thing. The relationship was really, really good, to be honest. But again, I didn't really think of him as H.E.H. Nizam. It was sort of, to me, he was just dad. Oh.
When I was preparing for this conversation with you, I just went through a news article where you said you said your father carried a history without closure. What does that mean?
Well, he carried his history very easily. I'm not quite sure what I meant by closure. He could recite things that happened throughout history. He had a knowledge of history that was probably unparalleled unless you get into sort of like people like professors and things of that nature. He would tell me stories about the Mughal times in India and about Hyderabad back through its inception. He personally, I think he carried that side of it very, very well. He was, until his dying day, incredibly loved by the people of Hyderabad.
Okay.
Obviously, there was a few mistakes that he made along the way, but again, you have to understand the man was human.
What kind of mistakes he made, and you think he should not have made those mistakes?
Well, I don't think it's any great secret that, he didn't do a particularly good job of holding on to a few of the assets down in Hyderabad, but he was also faced with huge amounts of difficulties down there. I've witnessed it firsthand when I've been spent this last 3 years of my life fighting over there and trying to, you know, deal with people that aren't of the best nature. And I think my father was a very trusting man and perhaps trusted a lot of the wrong people, unfortunately.
Okay.
Um,
What are you fighting for? Are you trying to be relevant? Are you fighting for something else?
no, I'm not, certainly not trying to be relevant. You can ask any of the people that have got me into this room. I shy away from any sort of public life. I have absolutely no desire to be famous. I have these kind of things always make me very uncomfortable talking about myself. I'm fighting for my father because I understand now, especially after I've dug into all of this, I understand just what's happened and the way people took advantage of that man. I'm fighting to see some form of justice prevail in all of that. I'm fighting to try and right some wrongs.
Please elaborate. What kind of right wrongs you are trying to,
My father was put into a position where, again, trusted the wrong people and then got himself into a position where he had to rely on some people. And there was just a great amount of very bad behavior that was portrayed onto that man, and a great many things were done that just weren't correct.
I can sense you're holding back. You are not feeling that ease
No,
to share with people, because this is the platform where you can, just sit and share your things, what you are trying to do, what you are trying to achieve, what you are trying to communicate.
uh,
Be comfortable and share everything you want.
no, it's not that I'm holding back. I'm just trying to choose my words quite carefully. I mean, it would come across as disingenuous, or it would come across as sort of me just saying bad things about people, and using your platform to just badmouth people and say this and say that. That's not necessarily what I want to do or what I want to portray. I mean, I I've seen how many lies, how much corruption has taken place, how much my father, especially, and myself, were just taken advantage of.
By whom? Who took advantage of your father?
Oh, that's a laundry list of people going back many, many years, but the most recent one would be, I would suggest, his first wife.
Okay.
Now, she got him into a position where he was completely reliant on her, and got him into a position where he was not able to make decisions of his own free will. And I just think it's very wrong
Okay.
what happened over there. I mean, you have to understand, my father came from a very, very different generation. So he didn't, if you go and you go back to, say, my great-grandfather, Mir Osman Ali Khan,
Yeah.
his sole job was to run the state of Hyderabad.
Mm.
So he would look at it and say, okay, well, just prime example, the plumbing's not particularly good.
Mm.
So I'm going to fix the plumbing in the old city and make it the best plumbing in India. He didn't have to think about how to do that because he had a minister for finance, a minister
Yeah.
that would handle all the infrastructure, all of that kind of thing. Now, my father, up until the age of 4 or 5 or whatever he was maybe even a bit older, that's the way he was brought up. He was brought up to, in theory, to rule a country back then, or rule the state of India. So he didn't understand the concept of money. He didn't understand how to make money, how to keep money, how to do all of this kind of thing. The best analogy, and the analogy that I keep using, is a mobile phone.
Yeah.
He understood what a mobile phone was. He understood that if he dialed, say, your number, he would be able to talk to you. Past that, the man had no idea. He didn't understand about SIM cards. He didn't understand how to get a contract. He didn't understand about satellites, all of this kind of thing, all the components that go in to make that mobile phone work. He had no idea on. And that was his downfall. So, that was taken advantage of by people the whole way through his life, unfortunately.
What was the special characteristic of your father that your great-grandfather picked your father as the next Nizam over his own 2 sons?
I think his own 2 sons, Muazzam Jar and Azam Jar, had their own issues as humans. And I think Mir Osman looked at my father being Western educated. He went to Harrow College and then Sandhurst, and he was quite a devout Muslim, but also very westernized and very progressive in his thinking. And if you look at Osman's history, everybody has this thing with him about being a miser, and that is just so far from the truth. It is.
Yeah, I have also seen stories like he was very miser, and he never
Look, look at Osmania University. Look at the railway system that he put in. To this day, and the reason I use plumbing as an example was the plumbing in the old city, when the monsoons happen, works far better than it does in Banjara Hills, Gachibowli, Jubilee Hills, and all of this kind of thing, because this is the infrastructure that he put in place. The railway system, women's rights, even Osman was big on. The arts, he was very, very big on promoting arts and culture and all of this kind of thing. Spent crores on the state, but on himself, he would walk around in an old, beat up Shirvani. The fez had holes in it and things like this, and he'd smoke the little rolled cigarettes that you could get cheaply from the marketplaces and things like that. But when it came to spending on the people of Hyderabad, I would go so far as to argue that as a ruler, he would have been one of the best in India at the time. Took care of his people very, very well. Infrastructure was there. Parks were there. Universities were there. Schooling was there. Integrating females and males into the school system. All of this kind of thing. Very, very, very progressive for his time.
So he was one of the wealthiest human beings on earth. Time
Correct.
magazine awarded him as the wealthiest man in 1937, right? And there are stories like he used to have that Jacob's diamond, 185 carat diamond, expensive than the Kohinoor diamond. Where did it go?
The government of India has it.
Government of India has it.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
It was part of the... See, what happened was, after Operation Polo and the government of India took over India, the then Prime Minister Nehru made an agreement with all of the rulers of India, but with Osman especially, and said, listen, we recognize you're a ruler. So you have different rights compared to everybody else that is part of the Union of India. So therefore, you go away and that's where the Blue Book comes into it, all the properties that Osman had, all of his private assets that he had, all of that kind of thing. Well, they were his to do as he pleased. Now, he obviously, as you well know, chose to give that all to my father. However, what he did is he set up something which is called the Nizam's Trusts, which to this day are still operational in Hyderabad. In the Nizam's Trust, he took care of all of his children, so all of the direct descendants of Mir Osman Ali Khan were taken care out of that. Also, the 1 to 6, so Mahbub Ali Pashas and all the way going back to Asif Jah I, also taking care out of that. And the way he funded it was with a great amount of shares and cash at the time, but also a great amount of jewelry. And that diamond was then sold to the Indian government, and that created the vast sum of the jewelry trust under the Nizam's Trust to take care of his other children and grandchildren and so on and so forth.
So do you think large families and multiple heirs are what making this dispute more complicated in India?
How do you mean?
The large families, the royal families have so many legal heirs. So they had multiple wives, multiple children. So that the number of legal heir are making the situation more complex now.
I can't comment on the other families because I haven't done the research on, and I don't like to talk about anything that I don't know 100% about. But with my family, it's incredibly simple. The government of India recognized Mir Osman, said he can do whatever he likes with his assets. He went on his passing, handed it all over to my father, and from whenever Mir Osman Ali Khan died until 1973, I think it was, then Indira Gandhi came out and she said, we're not recognizing royal families anymore as part of this, and they took away the privy purses. What that meant is my father became a citizen of India. Now, as a citizen of India, he is bound by Indian law. It is very, very cut and dry, which means he has 4 children. He's under Sunni Muslim law. His assets get divided into 6 equal parts. 2 go to the 2 male members. 1 part each goes to his 2 female members. It's as simple as that. And all these other cases that are brought in by the other descendants and things like that, it's very, very clear. None of them have any rights to it, but they just seem determined to clog up the Indian legal system with all these bogus cases and, quite frankly, waste all of your taxpayer money by bogging down the system when they know they have no rights to any of this kind of thing. So as far as my family is concerned, that is about as cut and dry as you can get. But the rest of the families, I don't know.
Okay.
Right.
So what role did Indira Gandhi's move in 1971 play in the downfall of families like yours,
Uh,
when assets were distributed, and that privy purse thing was also abolished?
well, I think taking the privy purse away obviously had a very detrimental effect on some of the families that weren't as wealthy, say, because you have to. You see, and this has happened, or this is not India specific, this has happened lots of times in Europe, a hell of a lot in Europe, that they have these hulking great houses that their grandfather got when he was in Europe, perhaps, I don't know, trading cotton or whatever it was in Europe that he was doing, or sugar or something like this. And then all of a sudden, the grandchild has to pay for the maintenance on these huge things without the income that's coming in. That creates a very, very big problem. And I don't think, there's a couple of families that stand out in my mind straight away, which is the royal family of Jaipur and the royal family of Jodhpur, that have done fantastic jobs of maintaining, their status and their sitting and, looking after the assets particularly well. But some of the other families haven't fared so well.
Do you think the royal families and the next generation from that lineage don't have that entrepreneurship? Why couldn't they multiply their money and invest in some of the profitable businesses? Why could they not become the businessman of India?
Again, I don't like to comment on things that I don't know about, but what I would say is, they came out of generations of having everything sort of done and handed to them, and, their soul, some of them would go into the militaries of the sons, or some would go into the politics that the father run the country or something like this. So they sort of had everything mapped out for them for generations and generations and generations, and all of a sudden that the so-called rug was pulled out from underneath them, and they had to adapt. It's like anything in life. Some sink, some swim.
Yeah, but most of them sunk.
I don't know. Like I said, I think there's some standouts in India that have done well, and then there's some that have fared not so well.
So when after 1971, after the abolishment of this law by Indira Gandhi, your father moved to Australia, right?
No.
There are stories.
No, he stayed in India for quite some time after that.
After that was the reason he moved to Australia. And there are stories that he used to have that larger farmhouses, and he used to act like a shepherd, and he used to that huge herd of sheep. Tell me something about those days, how he used to maintain the low profile. And there are stories like Australian Prime Minister, when he came to know that Mukarram Shah is here, he approached him and inquired about his well-being, and he asked him that why you are living like this. So there was an interesting reply from your father. Tell me about that story, about those days.
life for my father here in India was very, he loved it. He absolutely adored India, but it was also very difficult for him.
Okay.
And he also, he didn't have much in the way of freedom here. I remember I once asked him, I said, why didn't you go back to India and spend a bit more time there? And he said, Azam, I'm not free there. He said, I can't, if I want to even just go to the cinema to watch a movie, I have to take 10, 15 Arab bodyguards with me. I can't walk down the street because if I do, again, I have to take 10, 15, I have to have a police escort just to go for a walk in the park or something like this. He said, in Australia, I'm free. I get the chance. He deliberately bought this farm because he said it reminded him of Hyderabad. And I think he just genuinely loved the freedom of it all. He loved he was in the process of going through a very nasty divorce with Ezra, his first wife, the lady I'm fighting now.
Princess Ezra.
She's no more a princess than I am a polar bear. She divorced my father in 1981. She is no princess. She
Are
comes.
you in talking terms with her?
No.
I've seen a picture with her. You standing with her.
Oh, we were very close for a period of time, but as I said, both my father and I got taken advantage of. She was very, very good. She's one of the best manipulators I think I've ever come across
Okay.
as a person. And I'll quite happily go into that, but would you like me to finish with Australia or?
Yeah. Please go
into
into
that.
your Australia thing. Yeah.
So he was going through a very nasty divorce with Ezra, or about to. India was difficult for him. He was very. I'm going to segue a tiny little and reverse up a little bit. When he was very young, Mir Osman Ali Khan and Prime Minister Nehru came to a deal, and he became Prime Minister Nehru's ADC. I have a photo in my pocket of them all standing together.
Yeah.
Him and Prime Minister Nehru were quite friendly, but he used to tell me stories of, he said, I used to play in Prime Minister Nehru's backyard with Indira, which is Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. You asked me before about the privy purses, and I can tell you a story that he was sitting in his office in Chiran Palace in Hyderabad, and he said he got a phone call. He picked it up and said, hello, and it was Prime Minister Gandhi, Indira Gandhi. So, but they would talk as friends, and she said, Your Highness, but more than likely, she said, Barakat or Mukarram, I'm sorry, I have to do this. We're doing the privy purses. I'm sorry, India is struggling a little bit as a country. We're a new country. We can't afford to just keep paying out all these royal families and things like that. And my father just said to her, it's okay, Indira, we're friends. I have more than enough. It's fine. So that's the relationship he had with her. But he was very, very, very friendly with Rajiv Gandhi. And I think Rajiv's passing had a very bad effect on him. Okay. So, and then there was difficulties with, land being taken from him, all of these other so-called relatives of him, the direct descendants, causing his problems left, right, and center over here. They're suing him at every 2 minutes. He said he had an aunt that tried to poison him once or something like this. It was just, he kept trying to do good things, and was all the time these roadblocks were put up for him and things like that. So he went over to Australia and he found peace. I think for the first time in his life, he found peace in these big open spaces that reminded him of Hyderabad back when it was still quite a beautiful place. And, then he found my mother, and I don't know. I think he sort of, for a period of time in his life, he was happy.
If he was happy in Australia, then why did he leave Australia and landed Istanbul?
Not through choice, unfortunately, again. He, for a great many years over here, had an advisor by the name of Habib Ansari and some very good people working for him. And Habib Ansari, I believe, ended up being a high court judge. And he actually had some decent people back here working with him or working for him. And then along came a man by the name of Sadruddin Javeri. And my father didn't leave Australia because he wanted to leave Australia. He left because he was forced into it.
Forced by?
So, as I told you, my father didn't really understand money, how it was made, how to keep it, how to do all of this kind of thing. He would just ring one of his advisors up and say, I need X amount of dollars, make it happen for me. Now, again, I'm not condoning that kind of behavior, but that's just the way he was raised. So this Sadruddin Javeri chap, what he would do is he would say, okay, and he might take, say, this glass of water. That glass of water might be worth $10. My father might have rung him up and said, give me $2. So Sadru would take this glass of water, take it, give my father the $2, and he would keep the rest. But on top of that, and this is the very tricky part of what he did, again, falls back into the trusting thing. What he said to my father is, okay, Sarkar, you live in Australia now. You don't want to pay taxes on all of these things. I tell you what we'll do. I'll set up a company. You put the money into this company. I will give it to you as a loan in Australia, because if it's a loan, it's not classed as income.
Yeah.
You can just have it in your back pocket to spend as you wish. Again, I guess you're starting to see a little bit of a pattern here with the trust issues that he had. This carried on for X amount of years, and then Sadru said to him, we should also put the house on top of this loan, the house that he had, the farm that you were talking about. We should all do all of this. Got to a certain point where Sadru started to run out of the glasses or whatever the assets were back here that he was selling on my father's behalf. And he called these loans in Australia. So he turned to my father and said, okay, HEH, you owe me, X amount of dollars. And if you don't pay, I'm going to take your house. I'm going to take your farm. I'm going to take everything, which is exactly what he did. Made my father destitute when he had there was just all the money that Sadru had came from my father. And it was a very, very deliberate ploy on that man's behalf to just ruin him. So, hindsight's a horrible thing and you can't take back what's been done. But, if Sadruddin hadn't have come into my father's life, then I think he would have led the life that he was leading all that time, which was spend his base in Australia and then come back to India, be back here, come back for the festivals, come back to come and be with the people, and then spend some time in Europe, which he still loved, all of that kind of thing.
Did he remarry after, getting married to your mother?
Yeah, he got remarried to a Turkish lady for a little while there and had a daughter with her. And then was remarried again after her to another Turkish lady.
Yeah.
But none of them sort of lasted.
Okay. And tell me something about his, last days in Istanbul. Was he living in a two-room apartment?
he was not living very well at all. The apartment that he lived in, it was in an area called Fenerbahce, which is okay. It's certainly not the slums, but it's not great. The apartment was middle class, lower middle class at very best. I remember turning to Ezra at one point and saying, Ezra, Jesus, look at what is here. Look at the couches, the furniture and things like this. Can't we have some nice things in here for him? And she said to me, oh, Azam, he's too sick. What does he care? You ask me why I'm in this fight when her two children are living in multi-million-dollar houses, £1,000,000 houses in London and multi-million-dollar houses in California, and she lives in a huge 2-story villa on a private island off the coast of Istanbul, and Dad was there in a little 2-bedroom apartment, living the way he was. You ask me why I'm in this fight for reasons like that. It was the house that both her two children live in or had, he paid for. The life that all of them are living, this wonderful New York, Los Angeles, all around the world, traveling, all 5-star dinners here, there, everywhere, just whatever you want at your disposal.
So who was with him when he breathed his last from the family?
From the actual family, I don't think anybody, but I was the last person to see him, best of my knowledge.
You were there?
I wasn't there when he passed, no, but I was the last person. He passed about a month or so after I saw him, a bit longer.
Okay.
But I don't think anybody was. I think
you weren't informed about it?
I was, yeah. In fairness to them, I was informed about it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was
coming back to the current set of laws and current system of how these royal family properties are being taken care of. What is your observation? What is your experience? And what do you think about the handling of property and the distribution of property?
Look, it's a very difficult thing to come up with an answer for. I mean, for my family, we are lucky because so much of Osman's wealth was so great that there is so much there. It can be divided. So if you say, okay, well, if you just follow just nothing but the law in India, that works okay for my family because you can say, for example, okay, well, I'm going to take Falaknuma Palace and say Purani Haveli, and that's my 2/6 share. Okay, the rest gets divided up and there's still enough there for everybody to have what they are by law entitled to. For other families, that might not be so simple. How that works if you've only got one family home left, that becomes a difficulty. But I guess then you get into the point where the only way to do that would be have to sell the family home. And I get that would be horrifying for a lot of people. And I understand why there's fights there. I truly do. I don't see an easy solution to it for some of the other families. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is. I know for mine it's very easy and very cut and dry, as I said, because there is enough there to do it.
You have challenged your half brother Azmat Za's coronation as ninth Nizam. What is the basis of your opposition to it?
Exactly what we've just talked about. 1971 or 1973. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi unequivocally brought it in and said, we do not recognize royal families in India. There's no such thing as Nizams anymore. It doesn't exist. The last Nizam of Hyderabad was Mir Barkat Ali Khan, my father, because he went from Osman's passing until 1970, which was a period of about 8 to 10 years, where the Indian government, and I have the piece of paper, the Indian government recognized him and said, yes, we recognize you as the current Nizam of Hyderabad, signed off by the Secretary General of India. That's there. After Prime Minister Gandhi put those rules forward, there are no more Nizams. It's finished. It's for the history books.
So, in your views, why he's trying to become the ninth Nizam? What are his motives, and is he trying to claim his right to the property by
Yes.
declaring himself as Nizam?
It's nothing more than a greed and a money grab. It's a way for this overreaching greed that drives his mother and him to a certain degree to try and take everything that's there and keep it for themselves.
And what is the status of your lawsuit? You have filed a lawsuit asking for a free and fair distribution of assets?
Yeah. Look, we went to the Hyderabad Civil Court. It was difficult, to say the least. Faced quite some headwinds and had probably, not that they were bad, but just had the wrong legal team at the time to deal with my matters. And, we, on a very, very, very dubious ruling, the case was dismissed. We've taken it now to the High Court, and we're just waiting for our day in the High Court for that to come.
So, what has this entire experience taught you about trust, family, heritage?
The whole experience has changed me as a person, to be honest. It's I used to be a very sort of happy-go-lucky, probably much like my father, a little bit too trusting, and a little naive, I guess, as well. And this whole situation, it's been good and bad, because it's taught me a lot about life. It's taught me a lot about human nature. It's taught me a lot. I conduct myself very, very differently than I did before. Unfortunately, I've lost quite a bit of the sort of joy and happiness that I used to have in my life, because this has been all-consuming. I have not had more than 2 days away from it since I started 2.5, almost 3 years ago now. It has completely consumed my life. But I think if you believe in something, you find the energy for it. So it's not an experience I wish on anybody, but if you gave me a time machine and took me all back, with the knowledge that I've got now and said, would you do it all over again? I'd say I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Okay. And do you think today's laws are clear enough when it comes to, heritage property in royal estates, or they are very complex?
I think the problem is very complex, and I think it's compounded by a legal system in India that is very, very, very understrained. I said to you, all of these other inadvertent family members that bring all these cases all the time, and just all it does is clog up an already strained legal system. I think you have a complicated problem and a very strained and struggling system. And I think the two combined make it a difficult problem to solve. Honestly, I don't know how you would fix all of this, but that's for smarter men than me to figure out.
So the entire fight is for about ownership, or it's about being heard?
I don't think it's about either one of those things. As I said to you, I don't want to be heard. I don't like being in the public spotlight. I am very much my father's child. I don't crave being famous. I don't crave being, having my name splashed all over papers or whatever it is. That's not something that I'm at all interested in. My voice is neither here nor there. What gets me out of bed in the morning and what keeps me in this fight is knowing what's happened. And this is going to sound corny, but I don't really care. To me, I look at it as a fight between good and evil. Just knowing what these people have done, and the charades and the lies and the deception and the corruption on a level you cannot quite comprehend, is just, beyond me. And I think to myself, I can't let them get away with it. I'm going to keep fighting until there is not an ounce of breath left in me, because I know, look, I'm fairly sure. I'm almost 100% sure. I could ring Esther up tomorrow and say, listen, give me 1,000 crores. I'll walk away. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll walk away. I'm almost 100% sure she'd take that. But the problem is, I'd never be able to live with myself. I'd never be able to sit back, and I'd rather fight until there is nothing left and lose, because at least then I can walk away and go, okay, you did something. To take a couple of $100 million USD or a couple of 1,000 crores and then try and live with myself after that, no, I couldn't do it.
Thank you for these many details and sharing your heart out with us.
No problem.
One last question.
Sure.
Do you think there are some misconceptions in our minds about the life, people from these royal families live?
Well, generally what you see in what the everyday Indian, everyday British person, everyday European that has to have royal families, what they see versus what happens behind the scenes are two very, very different things. You look at, one is a very, very choreographed PR version of what you're meant to see, and then the other is probably a little bit more sort of real life. For me today, you've seen me in a very nice Italian suit, and looking well. And if you see me down in Hyderabad, I have, especially back when I was with my father, it would be a Sherwani and some bodyguards and all of this kind of thing and, all of that. But I'm at the happiest when I'm on the back of a horse in the bush, or when I'm walking my beautiful dog on the beach first thing in the morning, in just a pair of shorts. I think, I don't know if it's a misconception, but you'd have to think that there is, quite a few members of royal families everywhere that we're people. There is a life out there that is not sitting behind a 101 dining table with all of that kind of thing. And look, again, just on my family that I know about, I can tell you Osman was very similar. He had the version of him that he portrayed to the public, and that was the very strong, fearless leader, the grandfather of Hyderabad. And then behind the scenes, much like my father, I believe he was a little bit cheeky, and he used to joke with his ADC, a chap by the name of Nasser, and I don't know. I think the misconception might be that what you see as far as the PR side of things is the real life. But I think a lot of the royal family members have also a very simple life in the background as well. Look, young Harry, prime example. In the army, I know some gentlemen that served with him and served with him in Afghanistan. Prince Harry. And they said he was the loveliest, most down-to-earth, one of the guys, so to speak. But then you see him back when he was doing all these royal events, there's the regalia and all of this kind of thing. So I don't know if that's a misconception, but it's what I've picked up over the time.
Thank you so much for being on the show,
No
sharing
problem.
your story. तो आपने सुना कि कैसे बिहाइंड द सीन भी एक लाइफ होती है, चाहे वो रॉयल फैमिली हो, चाहे आम इंसान हो, सबके अपने अपने चैलेंजेस हैं, सबकी अपनी अपनी डिफ़िकल्टीज़ हैं, और उन चैलेंजेस, उन डिफ़िकल्टीज़ से हम लोग कैसे बाहर आते हैं, वो हमारे जीवन का एक फ़लसफ़ा होता है, वो उसका एक विज़न होता है, एक लक्ष्य होता है। आपको ये बातचीत कैसी लगी और आपको इस बातचीत में क्या नया जानने को मिला, वो कमेंट बॉक्स पे ज़रूर बताएं। ये थे आज़म ज़ा, सेकंड सन ऑफ 8th निज़ाम ऑफ हैदराबाद, मुकर्रम ज़ा। और ये जैसा कि मैंने बिगिनिंग में बताया था कि ये वो रियासत थी जो कि बहुत बड़ी थी, बहुत धनी थी, बहुत संपन्न थी, वन ऑफ द वेल्दिएस्ट रियासत इसको कहा गया। और उनकी फैमिली में भी इस तरह की कैसे कैसे टाइम के साथ डिस्प्यूट बढ़े और अब रेजोल्यूशन की तरफ आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। कानूनी पेचीदगियाँ हैं, बहुत सारी कॉम्प्लिकेशंस हैं, जैसे आप फिल्मों में देखते हैं, तो वो सारे प्लॉट्स होते हैं, वो सारे कॉन्स्पिरेसीज होते हैं, वो इनकी फैमिली में भी हैं। आपको ये बातचीत कैसे लगी, आपको क्या सीखने को मिला, कमेंट बॉक्स में ज़रूर बताएं। थैंक्स फॉर वॉचिंग।